Thank you for the invitation. Buongiorno. And first of all, I have to apologize for my terrible English because during the last 10 months I'm living in France and I'm speaking mostly French and I'm completely forgotten English. And I'm aware that many of you speak 3 or 4 foreign languages, but it's other generation. So forgive me. And if something is unclear, don't hesitate to ask questions during my speech. And as a lawyer, I prefer the discussion rather than lecture or conference. So don't hesitate to ask questions. So Marco introduced me very well, and but I'm here mostly not as Natalia Morozova, but mostly as a lawyer of Memorial. That's why I would like to present you to start this discussion with presenting the organization for which I'm working and which received, maybe as you know, last week received the Nobel Peace Prize. And it's a direct relevance to the topic of our conversation today. So, as you may know, in 1945, Mikhail Gorbachev, and the head of Soviet Union at that time, he's coming to power and he began the so-called perestroika. And one of the main signs was one of the main topics of the perestroika was the freedom of speech. And now at the late 1980s, it was possible to discuss the topics that previously was forbidden in Russian society, such as Stalin's repressions and all Stalin's terror and all the things like that. It was not it couldn't be mentioned before, and now it became the topic of discussion. That was there were very many books on this subject. And somewhere in the middle of perestroika, at the late 80s, the idea of historical truths became something like national idea. And one of the founder of Memorial, Arseny Roginsky, historian, he said that the fact that the history of the struggle for rights, freedom, and democracy in our country was closely linked to the struggle for historical truth. For many decades, the official lights about history were poured into our ears every day over loudspeakers and hammered into our school texts. Yet, at the same time, there was a family memory that opposed it silently. And now there was an opportunity to speak out. Thousands and thousands of publications of the past and on the truth about the past began to appear. On the way of such intense interest, a small group of young people took shape in Moscow in 1987, calling themselves the Memorial Group, which formulated task as the creation of a memorial to the victim of Soviet terror. Sorry. The idea of this group of people was not just create a moment, but also an archive and museum and a library, just like a complex and just like a center that would be both a source of recognition and learning. And this initiative was immediately adopted in different parts of the Soviet Union. And the groups the groups of very different people set up everywhere, and they signed, the signatures was collected in support of this initiative to creation a complex. And this is how the memorial movement began. Donc, the title of my conference today is the protection of human rights in Putin's Russia. The main gain of perestroika in the mid-80s was the right to freedom of speech. It was a time when it's finally possible to talk, to discuss, and not to fear to go to jail for telling a joke. But 30 years had passed, and nowadays the current regime, in Putin's Russia, Putin's regime, the most fear of Putin's regime is the truth. The truth which contradicts the official propaganda of nowadays. And that's why in nowadays Russia, you can get much more jail time for your words than for a murder. For example, last week, the politician Ilya Yashin received 8.5 years in jail, and for the murder in Russia, you can receive about 6 years, or for the rape. You can balance this this difference. So that we can dedicate from this that the biggest enemy of Putin's regime is the truth, is the word. And now the independent media in Russia is banned now. Social media is banned, and you can be imprisoned for any careless word. And I try to. It's a big question for me how we can get in 30 years we can get for freedom of speech, the whole freedom of speech, to this ban of every free word. And I would like, for me, it's today it's an open discussion. And I would like to begin with Memorial, with the creation of Memorial in the late 80s. As I said, it was the initiative of the people who wants to commemorate the Stalin repressions. But at the time, the Communist Party was still strong in the country. And the authorities tried to prevent Memorial from functioning. For example, for the leaders of the founders of the movement were constantly denied the official registration of the memorial as a legal entity under various pretexts. And it was only during the funeral of academician Andrei Sakharov. As you may know, it's one of the creators of atomic bomb, and then he became a fighter for human rights in the Soviet Union. And he was one of the founders of Memorial, and he was also the Nobel Peace Prize winner. And when he died, the leader of Soviet Union, no, it was in December 89. And during his funeral, the head of the state, Mikhail Gorbachev, approached Sakharov's widow, Yelena Bonner, and did what decency demanded him in that situation. He asked her how he could help her. Normally, in that situation, the widow said, I don't know, they asked some material things, some material stuff like apartment, car, or something else. But Yelena Bonner said, register memorial. And that's why, indeed, in a few weeks, in few months, in a couple of months, the memorial was registered as a juridical entity. And Sakharov, when he battled for registration memorial, he explained one of the objectives of memorial. And he explained it's like our country has lost from illegal repression, of organized hunger, of lawlessness and terror, many millions of its citizens. There are individual human lives, and only in public organization like Memorial can reach each and every story. We must trace the history of our country as it's embodied in the history of its people. And this idea of the importance of private life was revolutionary for the Soviet era, because during the Soviet period, during all the Soviet period, it was the state who was in head of everything, and human life has had no value at all. It was the state, and the service to state was always been central. And the idea that the individual could be the main person was completely new and unexpected. And it was the idea of memorial to commemorate each and every destiny, each and every people who was the victim of Stalin's repression. And in 4 years after Sakharov's death, in 93, okay, Russia adopted a new constitution. As the second article of this constitution was sorry, but you can read it here. The man, his rights and freedoms are the supreme value. The recognition, observance, and protection of the rights and freedoms of men and citizens shall be the obligation of the state. It was really the revolution in people's mind in Russia. Because as the Russian people, the Soviet people, grew up in the belief that their life is worthless. And if the state demanded, they should sacrifice their lives, and then they would become hero. And this speech you can recognize now in nowadays propaganda. Where it's very clear, and the propaganda of nowadays use all the speech of Soviet propaganda, when the lives of one man had not value at all. It's only the state which was important. And those who don't want to give up his life to his state was treated with indignation and as a ridiculous person. It was the hero was those who can sacrifice their lives for the state. And the memorial was the first who began to fight with this idea. But at the beginning of the memorial, it was only the question of preserving memory of the repression. And in the scientific work of preserving of archives, we distinguished three main aspects, three main orientations, three main blocks: the victims, the executioners, and the resistance of the. So Memorial worked a lot on on victims of the repression, including the search of burial sites, the struggle of rehabilitation, the access to the files of NKVD in archives, the collection of information from individuals. And the second objective was the executioners. Memorial create the biographical volumes about officers of NKVD and the manual, the system of criminal labor camp. It was important to know the names of those who killed people. And at the beginning, at the early 90s, all the archives was open. And we had many sources for this work. But nowadays, the FSB, who irritates the archives of NKVD and KGB, denied to researchers the access to archives, the access of the names of the executioners, because they want them to stay impunity, without punity, because now if they stay without punishment, that means that nowadays officers of FSB, they also could hope to stay without punishment in history, without names. So that was the beginning of the work of Memorial. But since the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, there were many national conflicts in the former empire. And as the members of Memorial admitted, it was simply become impossible to gather the profiles of the dead from the repressed and ignore the suffering of the living. So the members of Memorial concluded that the core of this work, the fight against massive and gross violation of human rights, cannot be dissociated from the present, and that today's problem are the direct years of historical events. And it became clear that in order to prevent the repetition of Stalin repression, it was necessary not only to protect rights of the victim of Stalin repression and to collect memories, but also to protect human rights here and now. And thus, in 1993, the Memorial Human Rights Center was founded. So it was two branches of Memorial, one historical, the historical one, and the human rights one. And I'm working especially as a lawyer for Memorial Human Rights Center. The first Chechen war broke out in 1994. Chechnya is a small republic in the North Caucasus. This territory was conquered by Russian Empire in 18th century, just like Crimea. This is the Islamic terrorists, they are Muslims who live there, quite rebellious, we have to say. During the Soviet era, the Chechen population was deported to Siberia in 1944. During Soviet period, then in 80s, some of them came back to Chechnya, and it was the first internal war for Russia. And the second one broken up in 1999. And during these two Chechnya campaigns, a Russian military was accused of serious crime in many occasions. And my colleagues from Memorial Human Rights Center, they went to this to Chechnya during this war to register these war crimes. And especially they made two reports about war crimes made by Russian army in Samashki in 95 and in village of Novaya Aldy in 2000. The difference between these reports is that between this campaign, Russia ratified European Convention on Human Rights. But my colleagues, they focused on crimes or military crimes of Russian army, and they tried to put these crimes on to Russian authorities, prosecutors, judges, and so on. But nobody was interested in these questions. For example, for the second report was about the killing of civil people in the village of Novaya Aldy on 5th February 2000. Russian forces engaged in killing, arson, rape, and looting in Novaya Aldy. The victim included the 82-year-old man and 1-year-old boy with his 29-year-old mother, who was 8 months pregnant. The report, if you read this report, you can see that the crimes they describe is the same crimes, and I mean the signature is the same that in reports of about Bucha, Irpin, and so on in Ukraine. At that time, it was reported about 46 the killing of 46 victims, along with 6 cases of rape, and it was documented very well. It was only the case which was very well documented, because we know that the victims, it was much more victims, but there was sometimes there was no any traces, or no parents, or people was afraid to speak. So it was very many obstacles to, and researchers couldn't use all the information they had. But everybody knows that it was the special police units from St. Petersburg and Ryazan province, which is this small town near Moscow. But there have never been any official investigation. And even if Putin made a statement and the same year on May 29 and said that all violations of the law in Chechnya will be stamped out in the most severe fashion, regardless of who committed them. But never never nobody was punished for these crimes. And if you follow the situation in Ukraine, maybe you heard about this term chain of impunity. And this chain of impunity began during this war in Chechnya, when Russian army, when the soldiers of Russian army were not punished for the crimes they committed. And that's why we have then it was the same situation with the war in Georgia, the war in Syria, the war, the beginning of the war in Ukraine and Donbass in 2014, and now from the 24th of February of this year. And as I said, between this war in Chechnya, Russia ratified the European Convention in 1998, sorry, 1998. And the case of killing of the civilian in Noveldy was one of the first to be brought before the European Court against Russia. As you probably know, the European Court doesn't work very fast. And the judgment on this case appeared only in 2007. And European Court said that it was Novelty, sorry. No, mistakes. And the European Court said that on the basis of the material in its possession, the court found it established that the applicant's relatives were killed by the servicemen and that their deaths can thus be attributed to the state. It observes that no explanation has been forthcoming from the Russian government as to circumstances of the death, nor has any grounds of justification has been relied on by them in respect of the use of lethal force by their agents. It is thus irrelevant in the respect whether the killing was occurred with the knowledge or on the order of the federal authorities. Liability for the applicant's relatives' death is therefore attributed to the respondent state, and there has been a violation of the Article 2 in respect of applicants' 11 relatives killed on 5th February 2000. So that Article 2 of the Convention is the article that is the article for life. So European Court awarded the compensation to the relatives of those who was killed. The Russian government has paid all these compensations, but the Russian government did nothing else. They didn't look for the guilty. They didn't punish anything, anybody. They just paid the money. I have to say that I'm working with European Court and the implementation of the judgment and decision of the European Court in Russia. And I have to say that Russian government always paid the compensation that European Court attributes to it. But it's it must be said that over the past few years, Russia has been one of the top 3 countries in numbers of complaints to the European Court. The other 2 being Turkey and Ukraine. But Russia paid everything except one case when it had to pay enormous sum for Yukos, because it was more than a budget of Russian Federation, and it was in 2015, and Russia refused to pay this. In all other cases, Russia pay all the compensation. It was even in budget of every year, and this budget it was about 10 millions. I can say 10 million rubles, maybe something for a year. But Russia didn't do nothing to prevent these crimes. So Russia didn't amended law which was not sufficient of sufficient quality, and Russia didn't review the cases on their merits. They only paid compensation. So human rights activists called this tax of impunity. This payment, so government pay and keep committing the crimes. During all this year, after the beginning, after the first war in Chechnya, Memorial worked extensively on human rights violations in Chechnya in North Caucasus. There were minor cases of tortures and unforced disappearance, abductions and executions. We in Memorial, we won about 100 cases in European court. In one case, can be involved several dozen of applicants. So in total, we helped about 900 people, applicants, 900 people, people from Caucasus. All of them received the compensation. And Russia spent more than €1 billion to compensate the victims of violations of human rights only in Chechnya. But as you can imagine, the rights continued to be violated. So it's easier to a state to pay than to establish a state of the rule of law. For example, our last very important case was about Kadyrov secret prisons. Kadyrov is the president of Chechnya during more than 15 years. And he made from this republic a really state in the state, and it's the republic where even Russian laws doesn't exist, and it's only the laws of established by Kadyrov which exists. And our one of the last case was about Kadyrov. Maybe we can. No. Can you? Sorry, it's a bit of a mess in my presentation. So, I'll explain because it's one of the in our archive. It's one of the most precious documents. Sorry for the. I think you can see nothing, but it's on Russian. But it's the plan of the caves of Kadyrov secret prison made by one of the prisoners who was tortured there. And for example, here you have the names of the prisoners who was with him in this cave. And here they was detained there during 2 months. And you have it's mean me. And they was detained here without any legal grounds. It was about 200 young men caught on the streets of towns of Chechnya, put to these caves without any legal grounds, and 27 of them were killed afterwards, and about 80 after tortures. They were tortured during they were beaten, they had actual electricity shocks and so on. They didn't give them to eat or to drink water, and there were also some.
We have also a question from the floor.
Yeah.
Are there photos of the prisons, or at least is the location known?
Oh, good question. Very good question. Because we were, and finally, I will reply in 2 minutes. Because after a couple of months of tortures, the people signed everything they asked them, and then they were judged for the crimes they didn't committed, because only because when you're tortured, you can sign everything they ask you, and they received from 9 to 10 years of prison. And we worked on this case with a journalist of Novaya Gazeta, namely Elena Milashina, very great journalist and great researcher. And she also because of her, even ombudsman of Russia came to Chechnya and examined these caves. And she said that she didn't see nothing at all, that she didn't see no prisoners, no traces of crimes, no traces of blood, nothing at all, that everything was clear, it was everything was in order. She spoke to those who was, because it was after this 27 persons were killed, and she pretended to speak to one of the killed person, because it was a cousin of this person who was, and the Chechen authorities are very have the ability to. You have to understand that in Chechnya everybody afraid of everything, because when you're in opposition of Kadyrov, they threaten you, and even if you are not in Chechnya, they threaten your family. And it is not only your parents and your brothers and sisters, it's also your cousins, your nephews, your, I don't know, all a lot of parents. It's and it's really dangerous to speak to the human rights defenders, to the journalists, and the fear is everywhere in Chechnya. And it is even not imaginable that we can have photos of these caves because it's very close, very secret. It's really secret prison. It's only the those who are now in prison in Russia, they can speak, because this plan we received from our applicant who now spent 10 years in colony in near Nizhny Novgorod. And only if you are in prison in Russia, you can a bit speak. And if you are sure that all of your family is not in danger, you have no family, it's rare, or your family is not in Chechnya. So no, we have no any photos and no any other traces like this, only this description. But and unfortunately, the practice that started in Chechnya, beating at the police station, planting drugs. For example, one of my colleagues in Chechnya was planting drugs and was accused for 4 years in prison for drugs, and threats to the family, sexualized violence. Then this practice began in Chechnya, and then we can see it all over the country. And my colleagues call this Chechenization of Russia. These crimes, it was all over the years. It began during the first Chechen War, and this case I told you it was in 2017. So during 20 years in Chechnya and in other republics of Northern Caucasus, you have this violation of human rights, tortures, and executions, abductions, and so on, so on. And you may ask why Russian civil society did not react to these crimes committed by authorities. I have to say that I have no answer to this question, but I have to explain you that at the beginning of Putin's era, we had a kind of non-verbal pact between the government and the society, according to which the government offered the society quiet and secure life, and people of creative profession, intellectuals, they create their business, receive a reasonable salary, bought flats, summer house, they went holidays, they traveled abroad, so on, so on. They have like a European life, not like a life in Soviet Union. And instead of this, they don't. And for this reason, they have not interested in politics. And I remember well that in Moscow at that time, at the beginning of 2000, it was not comme il faut to be interested in politics. It was something boring. And if you mentioned Chechen War, the crimes, war crimes, crimes against humanity, crimes, human rights defenders, it was too boring. It was very distant. It was in Chechnya. It was not in Moscow. and people who talked about human rights at that time, and for example, the shooting of civilian in Chechnya, there was a special term for these human rights defenders. They in Russian they were called Demshiza, Dem comme democratic and Shiza comme schizophrenic. So you see you see the approach, and I have to in our defense, I have to say that we have 70 years of Soviet rule, of Soviet era, and all citizens of all over the country lived in poverty and were afraid to say something. And in the 90s, we can speak, we read a lot of books about our past, which were banned before. But after that, after this, all this information we get, we decided to take an advantage of consumer society. And I suppose that it was the success of the pact between society and the government. From this, this success came from, and some of the people, as you may see, they continue to respect this pact to these days. I mean, you can see a lot of people in Russia of nowadays that they do not oppose the war, but they are not support the war. They are just saying it's out of my business. I'm not interested in politics. And Ukraine is far from, is very far. If you live in Siberia, for example, Ukraine is really very far from your native town. And it was a very successful pact between society, and it was, but at some point something changed. And most likely it was happened. Yeah, thank you. It was happened in September 2011 during when the president who was Dmitry Medvedev announced that the next president will be Vladimir Putin, and suddenly it was. For me, it's a bit inexplicable because it was evident for everybody. But this lack of respect for civil society provoke some wave. And after the fraud during the Duma election in December 2011, the first mass political rally took place in Moscow, and here it is. It was 10 years ago. At that day, 300 people were arrested, and at that time it seemed like a lot of people for 300 people. Nowadays it's 1,000. And the rallies like this continued through the winter and spring of 2012. And the biggest was the rally of 6th of May 2012. More than 200,000 people came to the center of Moscow to protest against the fraud of presidential elections. And at that day, more than 200 people were detained. And for the first time, it was a criminal charges were brought against nearly 30 persons. And some of them, those who failed to immigrate, received up to 4 years in prison. And at the same time, Russian legislation began to be reformed, and a law was passed to increase accountability for participation in rallies. Legislation on foreign agents were introduced. I will speak about it a bit later. And pressure was brought to be as a human rights NGO and independent media. And as for the rally, the legislation changed in that way that first it was an offense to participate in the non-permitted rally, and you have it was very difficult to have the permission from the authorities to make the rally. It was quite impossible. So all the political rallies was banned, and so the participation in this rally was offense. For the first time, it was an offense with a rather small fine. For the second time, it was an arrest and with a big fine. And for the fourth time, it was a criminal case. And so if you have, for the first time, it's okay. You're detained, you receive your fine, you pay your fine, and it's okay. It's not very, it's not very difficult, yeah, I mean. But for the second time, you can spend till 30 days in prison, which is not very very nice place. And for the for first time, you can receive the about till 5 years in prison. And that's why when now in Paris, during the manifestation in Paris, I heard this slogan, Les Russes, levez-vous, Russian stands up and go to protest. But it's very different in Europe, as you can because if you protest, it's like this. And in Paris, I don't know how it's in Italy. But in Paris, you have I don't know 5 rallies during weekend, even in different places, and you never see something like this, even after the match, football match of France-Morocco. But in Russia, it is very dangerous. But because you can be beaten like this, or you can be beaten in a police station, and you can't ask the people to be a hero. Yes, we have many heroes who are in prison in Russia nowadays, but you can't ask everybody to be a hero. So it was in summer 2019 when the people in Moscow protested that their candidates were not allowed to be elected to the city's Duma. It was the protest was lasted during 3 months, from June till September, till the beginning of September. In September, there were these elections without any oppositional candidates. And the next wave was in winter of 2021, when people protested of arrest of Alexei Navalny. And each of these ways results in thousands of detentions, not only in Moscow, but all across the country, and it resulted with hundreds of criminal cases. And with another legislation reform, after which you cannot go to the street in any case. All manifestation was forbidden, and it was in pretext of COVID also, but the COVID restrictions till nowadays is still in force in Russia. So when after the 24th of September or February this year, we had during first couple of weeks we had 15,000 people who were arrested for protestation against the war. And at the beginning of March, 4th of March, the legislation changed again. And now you cannot pronounce the more war, the more peace, and you can be detained even for the green ribbon, which symbolizes the support for the struggle for the peace. We have many strange cases. The man who was detained for he came to the street with the volume of Tolstoy, War and Peace. The other case was, you know, the credit card, Russian credit card has the name of Mir, which it's peace. And one person came to the street with only with a credit card like this. It was detained. The other one, we have sausages with the name of Miratorg. Donc, the first, the three letters, Mir. So the person take out the other letters. It was the sausages with Mir. And it was detained for these sausages. Really, it was sausages. And then during the first weeks of the war, I have to know that I understand very well that it's not the first weeks of the war, because the war began in 2014. And when I referred to the February of this year, I have to say the whole invasion, or but sometimes I mistake. It's my mistake, my fault, and sometimes when I say beginning of the war, I mean the beginning of whole invasion. So that in February and the beginning of March this year, the police stopped people and took their phones and to see the messages and to see what chat on what sites the person are looking. And my colleague, for example, was arrested immediately for the. It was not him who hold banner with the more peace or something like that. He only greeted a man who holded that banner, and both of them were just for greeting a man. He was put in a jail for 30 days. So I repeat my my idea that we can't ask people to be a hero and to spend their days in prison. And it's not only about legislation, but also about the courts. But during last 20 years, we have no independent court in Russia. And if you are arrested, if police detain you on the street, the court will plead you guilty. It's for sure. I have only some few very rare cases which was sometimes a mistake, but normally when police caught you, the court will find you guilty. And at the beginning of March, the legislation changed, as I said, and there were few new laws about the fakes about Russian army. And the first person who received 7 years and 11 months in prison for anti-war statement, 7 years and 11 months in prison. Just it was the Moscow municipal deputy Alexei Gorinov, and he was during the council meeting of as he was a deputy in some region of Moscow. It was meeting about 20 persons, and they discussed the some district holidays. And he said that it's not a good time for district holidays while children are dying in Ukraine. And for this, he received 6 years and 11 months in prison. And then it was Alexei Yashin from the same municipal council. He's a politician who also received recently for 8 years and 6 months in prison, only for the fact that during his online he spoke about Bucha and crimes committed by Russian army in Bucha. And if you see his online, he quote the official position of a Russian ministry and the rather neutral. He said that it's not. He even doesn't say that it's not true. He said that he doubts that it can be true. And he also quote about some international reports about Bucha. And for this, he received 8 years and 6 months in prison. And one other question that I want to stop in, it was about the foreign agent. Yeah, thank you. This legislation was passed in summer 2012 and came in force in November 2012. After these massive political rallies in Moscow. And initially, this legislation was applied only to non-profit organizations, especially for organizations who defend human rights. Now it applies to the media and ordinary citizens, journalists, lawyers, activists, and recently it was another change for this legislation. But it's about also the restriction for the civil society. So what is foreign agent? You have to become foreign agent, two conditions must be met: receiving foreign funding, and carrying political activities. But if all two terms are interpreted as broadly as possible. For example, the donation to an organization, the donation of 200 rubles, it's about €5, from the citizen of Moldova to an NGO was declared a foreign funding. As you can understand, the non-commercial, non-profit organization cannot control the donations. And the other example, a journalist was recognized as a foreign agent for because he transferred the funds from his own account in dollars to his own account in rubles. It was foreign funds. And my favorite, that two guys take a taxi together. One paid, and the other reimbursed him. And this other one was American student, so his was foreign funds. It was about €3 for taxi somewhere in Russia. And it was foreign funders to €3 from American student. And why we don't like the name foreign agent? Donc, for the beginner, it's fake. It's a lie. We are not agent of any government. But it's also evoke. It's also have association with Stalin's enemy of people and spies and fifth column. And the person or association which was declared foreign agent have to label all materials distributed by them as foreign agent. Memorials were among the first organization to declare foreign agents. And since then, our organizations had to put this label all over on books, on I don't know, announce on, and but for the beginning, we don't need to put this label on our online resources. But then ministry changed its mind and said, no, you have to put this on your social net, in your account in Facebook and Instagram, YouTube, and so on, so on. But it said we received the fines for all these social for Facebook. Finally, we received about 30 fines for not labeling online resources, and it was about 6 million rubles. It's a huge amount for us, but we paid all this. It was in 2019-2020. We paid all fines. It was a crowdfunding campaign. We received about dozens of thousands of donations, but in November, just before the invasion of Ukraine, the government decided the state decided that it is not enough, and the memorial have been liquidated, and the crime was the same. We paid all the fines, and then prosecutor said that no, it's the repeated and gross violation of the law, and even if you paid, you have been liquidated. And instead of actually fighting crimes, protecting victims, and restoring justice, our state representatives are busy to looking for labels on Twitter, on YouTube, and once judge in a trial told me, for the judges it was a joke, because I explained to the judge that we can't put this label because it's a long label. It's all the material distributed by, produced or distributed by this organization was distributed by the organization which function as a foreign agent, something like that. It's a big label. And we can't put it in Twitter because you have no enough space for this. And the judge told me, but you have to invent an emoji of foreign agent, like emoji with the black glasses and the head like a spy. For them, it was just a joke. So the memorial was liquidated for this offense in December 1 in International Memorial was liquidated on 28th of December, and Memorial Human Rights Center was liquidated on 29th of December. And now we understand that it was okay. It was important to liquidate the organizations that investigates your serious human rights violations just before the invasion of Ukraine. As our president, Alexander Cherkasov, said, Memorial spent 30 years fighting impunity for Russia's war crimes, crimes against humanity. That's why we are getting shut down now. So. Maybe we will discuss this in Q&A section. But I have to say that despite the liquidation, Memorial continued its work, and we continue to keep the memory of political repressions alive, and we continue to defend human rights. The question that often I hear very often is how you can and for what you defend human rights nowadays in Russia, because it's evident that that you can't win in a trial, that Memorial will be closed, liquidated, that it will be guilty verdict, and lawyers in nowadays Russia said that our help is just like a palliative care, and we are doing this in two purposes. The first one is we recorded the violations, we recorded the violations during the Chechen's war. We recorded who violated human rights, when, how, because when the situation changes, we have to build a new Russia, and we will not repeat our mistakes, and we will know the names of the judges, for example, who convicted innocent people like Alexei Gorinov or Ilya Yashin or Alexei Navalny. This second purpose is that the lawyers in today's Russia, they are mediators between prisoners and the society. And it's only by lawyers that we know the situation. And I'm sure that the information protects. And when you speak about tortures in Russian prison, it doesn't stop tortures, but if more people are aware of these tortures, it can broken one day this chain of impunity, and the light of the day for these tortures, for these crimes, it's very important. And now in the political prisoners in Russia, there are tortured not only by Alexei Navalny in his jail. He is not beaten. They don't, but he didn't. He is not. He he doesn't receive his wife's letters. He is deprived of visits. They put him for months in the punishment cell, which is prison in prison. It's the cell of 2 meters and 2 meters with only one chair, not chair, even a stool in it. And that's all. And Alexei Gorin, for example, he is 67 years old. He's a sick man, and he had no medicine in. There is no medicine in prison where he is. There is no doctor, and he is constantly cold, and he has no the warm clothes. And you can imagine in Russia is very cold. And it's if we don't speak about this, we left Russian government to kill people in prison silently. And one of and as I said, the truth is the biggest enemy of Putin's Russia. And our only possibility is to speak about this and to put the daylight on the crime of this government. If you have any questions.
So thank you a lot, Natalia, for this, I would say, very dense and informative presentation. And I would say we could already evaluate as being an important witness of what is happening actually in today's Russia, as being also a human rights defender. I would like now to collect some questions from the floor. I guess that most of the topics touched by Natalia have been already touched by other speakers in this cycle, but in a sense, she offered us another point of view, that is the point of view of a member of the human rights centers in International Memorial International, and especially I would say also a practitioner in a sense. Maybe if there is no question coming from the floor directly, I could pose one that emerged during our conversation while traveling to Forlì by train. As you can see, we usually mean, we could say, civil society in the Russian Federation, embodying it into specific, we could say, organizations. So we have Memorial Italia, Memorial International, we have Novaya Gazeta, we have OVD Info, for example. But actually, what emerged in our conversation together with Natalia, all these organizations are more or less connected. So people working as journalists, as lawyers, and as historians are actually working together. And so my question to you from a practical point of view is about how do these connections work? And also from a practical point of view, how can you have worked also for OVD Info? How actually you get in touch with people who got arrested, how you persuade them that they need to be helped while being arrested, because I guess this is something that we should talk about also to let everybody know how actually this process comes out. Actually, in most cases, you explain me that most of the people who are arrested are not even protesters, are people passing by the protest and being there in the street. And you should even persuade them to be that they need some legal support. So could you maybe elaborate more on this?
Yes, it's two questions. About non-profit organization, about activists, journalists, lawyers. Yes, it's very In Russia nowadays, it's all. The problem is that it's not a lot of organization. We knew each other. It's a very narrow society, but we are working with a journalist because sometimes, as I said, this is a journalist of Novaya Gazeta who was aware about situation in Chechnya and who came to us to discuss the situation and ask us the legal help. Sometimes it's a lawyer who goes to the journalist because they need to share the information with the society. But you have also the as we have seen in summer of 2019, it's a big Russian society that they are not activists, lawyers, journalists. They are simple citizens. I don't know, IT manager. I don't know the profession really. It's very many people who are not agree with this government, with this situation, and they went to the street when it was rather safe. Not you have seen the photo, but I assure you that it was at the time it was safe. Now it was not safe at all, really. And the media, the ONG, the organization of human rights defenders, there was only the leaders of the protest. Because you have really the population who are not agree and who wants to protest. But as I said, it's very it was easy to keep them silent. And that is a problem. And what about about your second question? I worked as a volunteer in over the Info. It's the organization who it was created the 5 December 2011 after the day of the first massive rally, a political rally, and the motto of this organization is that information defense. And they collect information about the detentions. And then this organization sent the lawyers to the courts to protect those who was judged after these detentions. And sometimes, as Marco said, it was only the people who passed by, because all the rallies was in the center of Moscow, and you have a lot of tourists from all over Russia who came in center of Moscow in Saturday, and sometimes I arrive in the court sent by over the Info to help those who was arrested and who everybody the real activists, they had the phone number over the Info. Once arrested, once detained, they call over the Info. Over the Info put the name in the in the list. There was air table organized by that, who is in what bus, and then which bus went in what police station, how many people are in this police station, how many people in that police station, and because this information can help to help the organization of the process, because each police station depends on the trial. And you can imagine that if you have 10 persons in this police station, then the next day all these persons will be in this particular trial, and you send the lawyer to this court to add these people. And I was one of these lawyers who go to the court without knowing the names, because sometimes you have no the names. You have only the information that couple dozen of people will arrive to this court after the rally, and some of them are they don't know about over the info, and they even didn't know about this political rally. But the problem is that they were all guilty even before arriving to the court, because it was decided before how to. Even the president of each particular court decided himself or herself what penalty, what punishment they received. For example, I was in a situation when, and it depends on the number of places in it's not a really prison. It's administrative prison, we can say, because the biggest penalty is 30 days. So it's like administrative prison, and in function of places in these prisons, they gave the penalties to those who participated in rallies. And after the rallies, you have about 25 courts who dealt with this participant of these rallies. And some days in this court, in this particular court, they gave everybody 10 days of detention. And then in 2 weeks, this particular court decided that only fines, they gave only fines, not detentions. And the other one will give, at the beginning they gave fines, and in 2 weeks they gave detention. And it's nothing to do with the case file, because in the case file you have only the witness of police. And one day I had the case. That day, the president of this court, of this particular court, said that it will be 10 days for everybody. Nothing to do. It was 10 days for everybody. And I had the applicant who was who passed by, and he was detained when he after his fitness club. He was in a swimming pool, and he had with him all this wet stuff, swimming suit and so on. And he had the card of this fitness club with the time of when he when he came and when he left this club, and it was 5 minutes before his detention. So the judge was. You have nothing to say. You have a guy with the white swimming suit with the card from a fitness club. It's evident that he was not for the rally. He was for his fitness club, with the address of this fitness club, which is in the rally, and the punishment was a very big fine, but not arrest. That day, it was like not guilty, but fine. But even he had to pay fine because he was in wrong place in wrong time.
Okay, thank you, Natalia. Maybe we have some time for one question, because I know that you have a quite full day today of workshops, Marco, and then Sofia.
So when I was writing my thesis, my final paper for the bachelor, I bumped into a paper written by scholar Harold Berman. He is an American scholar that was an expert in comparative international and Soviet-Russian law. And basically, he argues that he makes this comparison between the US Constitution and 1977 Soviet Constitution. And he states that in the US Constitution, rights, fundamental rights, are phrased in terms of what the state is forbidden to do. And in the Soviet Constitution, rights are phrased in terms of what a citizen may do, but not in terms of what the state is forbidden to do. And then I sort of checked the Russian constitution of today, and there is written that the state guarantees the equality of rights and freedoms of people, vis-a-vis all rasi, and so on. And then I also checked the Italian one. And there is written that, for example, personal freedom cannot be violated prior to the entity of the state. So what do you think? It's like we know that the Constitution aims at defending rights. It's like the roots of the tree, you know? According to your personal opinions, do you think that's therefore the problem of like civil and political and civil rights in Russia is like a structural one, so a structural problem, or not? What do you think about it?
Okay, maybe we can collect the other question for Sofia.
Maybe I can. I try to be.
Okay, we have 5 minutes, but we will manage to.
Okay. So you know, as I said, the Russian constitution was good, I have to say, because it was focused on a man. It was completely different from the Soviet constitution, which began with the state. The first chapter of the Soviet constitution, it was about the state. And it's for the first time the Russian constitution begins with a man, but the problem is that we do not respect our constitution, and this maybe you know that it's the chapter 1, 2, and 9 was you can't change these chapters. It's because it's the main chapters for the constitution, and you can change everything in between. But in 2020, the constitution was changed, and nowadays constitution, it's a bit of a mess because one article contradicts others, and you have many articles in in the middle part, which contradicts the main first and second chapter, and I think that it is because Russia don't have this notion of rule of law, and do not have the respect of constitution, and that's a problem. Because initially the constitution was not ideal, but it was comparable with the normal democratic constitutions. I don't know if
It was not a tough one. Thank you.
I really wanted to ask another thing about if you intervened also as a legal expert in the cases that were regarding the abuse of soldiers into the conflicts, like into the military. Because as I gathered, like from Politkovskaya books, there were both of them, like both internal and external violation of human rights. So I wondered how much things could you do, like for example, for the mothers or with the association of mothers of these children?
You know, I don't personally. I don't work. I didn't work on these cases. You have some organizations, mothers, specific organization, which some of them was forbidden before. Yes, of course.
Yes, of course, because you can't translate it.
Yes, and the problem is that it's very difficult to. It's a bit same difficulties that with Chechnya, because they are afraid. Mothers are afraid of to speak because of their child, because of their children, the other children. You know, the parents are afraid. It's and this fear. It's the main sentiment now in nowadays Russia, because it's very easy to punish the families, and the families of soldiers, and the families in Chechnya, and so on.
Yes, so the answer is no. Yes, but no.
Yeah.
No, I expected that actually. It was interesting to me. I was, yeah, of course.
Okay, I guess that we can close our session and we can thank